for attending the webinar today on our Platinum API. My name is Antonio. Let's just get started and dive right in. So if you watched the last webinar, which was primarily get calls, getting information out of our API, a lot of this initial stuff will look familiar. The API, again, exists to spread the utility of data IDX Broker provides. The main data that we're going to be interested in today is going to be lead data. Developers and clients alike can add or edit the data in a programmatic and even automated fashion. This is pretty useful with leads especially because ideally you have a lot of them. So this API can add or manipulate data within the IDX Broker system. Here's some limitations we have. The API cannot modify MLS listings, supplemental listings via the API. So all the listings are still going to have to be entered either in the MLS at the beginning or as a supplemental listing in the IDX Broker dashboard. You'll not be able to create or modify saved links or widgets via the API. You will be able to create and modify saved searches for your leads, which I'll show you here in a little bit. But as for your saved leads, you still have to create those in the dashboard as of now. Same thing with widgets. So put will create new data, while post will modify existing data. You can do a bulk put if you're importing, let's say, from another, from some kind of database. You can bulk input leads, but that will be in batches of 100. So that's another limitation. Requirements are pretty much the same for all of our API calls. This is, if you watched our previous webinar, available on our YouTube channel. If you haven't, these requirements are going to be reiterated every time. A valid IDX Broker Platinum API key. The content type must be in request headers, and I'll show you that here when we look at the anatomy of some of these calls. And you must make your API calls using HTTPS. If you don't, the API will return an error. So here's the anatomy of a call to put in a lead. And this is being done at the client level, just so you know. We can look at the same stuff we had in our previous webinar, but let's look at this one now. Again, the required access URL, HTTPS, like I said in the last page, is required. For this data array, it's going to be an array of the information we're putting in. Here I'm inputting myself. There's my first name, my last name, email, and of course I'm stating the method. This is of course encoded and delineated into the URL string. There are a couple, if you're looking for it to add more data to this than first name, last name, and email, of course you can always check our documentation for that. The headers are pretty much the same as before. API key required. Content type, like I mentioned before, will always be application-x-ww-form-URL encoded. Obviously, this one's an access key of the client level. If you're a partner level, you can add your ancillary key. Output type for this is going to be JSON. JSON is the default on our API call documentation. You can specify JSON or XML in your IDX Broker dashboard. This, declaring it here in your headers, will override that. So we're going to set up curl here, just like the other calls we've made. Execute the curl, store the response code for later reference. These response codes are helpful when initially programming your API calls to let you know if everything's going through correctly. So that's pretty much it to put a new lead into the IDX Broker system. You pretty much can copy this and fill out this area. Again, all available in our documentation. So let's take a look at it. Let's put someone in, just to see how it looks. I decided to do a fun example from another API. So here I'm making a call to the API actually from marvel.com. I'm going to put in Spider-Man because, and the reason I'm doing this is just to show that as long as you get data from anywhere, it can be put into the IDX Broker system. So let's take a look at the data we get from my Marvel API call. We're going to get the name, Spider-Man. a description of him. This is the last date this was modified, which could be important if we're going to do updates incrementally. And an ID number. ID numbers are pretty important since this data is coming from a separate system outside of IDX Broker. He's probably going to have his own ID number in that system, just like he does in IDX Broker Platinum. So now that we've gotten some data to play with, let's go ahead and set up a couple calls here. So I'm going to combine this all into one script where I do that Marvel API call. Then I input the lead. I'm going to give him a search, and I'm going to put a note on here. For the note, I'm going to put in his Marvel unique ID in case I need to reference it later. Again, this can all be found in the documentation. Let's take a quick look at those. So here I'm going to, after I run my Marvel API call, I'm going to run the post, or put, sorry, and we're also going to add a note, which is this call. You can see it's all here. You can just copy and paste and add your note in here. And I'm also going to give him a search. So there's a lot of different options with the search. This, again, is going to look a lot like your normal IDX Broker search when you do them on a search page, ampersand or delineated here in this array. So we specify the MLS ID, which is, and the lead ID. And then the search criteria goes right in here, and we can create our array for his safe search. So now that we've done that, let's just go ahead and run all these calls. So I've gone ahead and shown this in text form as the calls run through. We see our code is 200, meaning everything's all good. Spider-Man's been added. His new lead ID is 173. I add the note for his Marvel ID. And I've even given him a search that searches for his old apartment in New York. This one does not work, and I wanted to show this because the API is pretty smart, and it actually tells me that the fields aren't going to work. I don't have the Manhattan MLS, so I'm not able to provide this for him. In my programming, I can search for this error and set myself up an alert, so that way I don't input searches for leads that I know aren't going to work. Lastly, I added the summary as another note because I like the summary. Let's go ahead and go into an IDX Broker account. And go into my account. And let's see what leads we have. Looks like I have some existing leads, and there is our lead Peter Parker, Spider-Man, a fake email. Let's go take a look at the lead info. And here are the notes I added. Here's his Marvel ID. Here is the description given by the Marvel API. And he even has a save search here. Down in the corner, you'll see that it has the street number, 410, and the street name, Chelsea, which is where Spider-Man lived in the comic books. So let's go ahead and clear all the leads while we're in here. So that way we'll get a new fresh batch. And you can see that these are coming in from my API calls. So I have no leads now. That's great. Okay, so now we see Spider-Man's been inputted. I deleted him. Let's move on to going beyond just one lead. So that was fun, and Marvel data is fun, but not practical since superheroes can't buy houses. Like I said, any data you see fit can be brought in as long as you have that information, a name, an email address. That should be enough to put someone in as a lead. Email databases, other lead capture systems, CRMs, any place you can get data from, you can start having leads with safe searches and notes, and share this across your account with your agents if you so choose. Only possibilities are only limited, by the data you can gather. Thank you again to Marvel Comics and their API. So let's look at something a little more practical and a little more related to what we normally do. We can get CRM data from whatever CRM we have signed up. We can call that data, usually from a CRM if it allows, with a GET call for said data. This data can then be cached into a data table. Here I have a bunch of emails, names, and of course the CRM unique ID. This would be the unique ID that originally comes from the CRM data, much like I just did with Spidey. One thing that's missing from our table, we notice there's no IDX Broker lead ID. We're going to want both of those, so that way, should we have to send data back and forth, we can reference this data belongs to this ID, which corresponds to this ID, which we would then send back to our CRM. Let's go ahead and import some stuff from our CRM. Looks like I'm getting an error because I already have those guys in there. So let's go ahead and clear out my clear all these guys out, and we'll add them all in again. As you can see, the API will not let you add leads twice. It will return an error message if you attempt to add leads twice. Let's go back to my page now that I've cleared out those leads, and we can see now we've added leads to my tables and to our into my account. Response code is now 200. Looks like everybody was added this time now that I've cleared them out. Again, the error codes before were because they were duplicates. Let's check our data table. Data table shows now I have unique IDs for both sides. Now that I have this all in my table, I can make calls to either the CRM or IDX Broker, however I see fit, and time to update. And this can create a, while not a real-time sync, what we're looking for here is probably something more along the lines of a virtual sync as opposed to real-time. I have all the information I need. Should one of these customers or emails change their name, change their email, this table can grow to have things like notes, anything that you can pass back and forth. So now that we've gotten data from an API, gotten data from a CRM, and added them to the IDX Broker, my IDX Broker account, we already have data. That's great. What about changing data? So we can update this data that we've got pulled from whatever source it may be via a post. Not all data can be updated via the API. I would encourage you to check out the documentation for that to see which ones. So the post call looks pretty much the same as a put call. You see it's all the information's here about this lead identification number, which we now know in our table. Everything else is pretty much the same. But I want to post to a couple leads at once. I don't just want to post to one. Again, we're doing this all on the client level. So I've set the lead ID as a variable. I've set the first name as a variable, the last name as a variable. I can now loop through whatever array I have and update multiple leads in one call. So now that that's happened, let's go ahead. Take a quick look here. Here's our lead table again, recognized from before. We have 2 leads here with the same name, test, and test. Lead 189 in IDX Broker, lead 180 in IDX Broker as well, and of course their corresponding CRM unique IDs. So let's go ahead and update them. So I've initiated the call to update these 2 to change their names, so they're not the same. My response code is 204 because there's no output to return. I've also echoed that the lead ID was updated. Let's take a look inside middleware. So test changed to Mr. Test. And our other gentleman named Test changed to Sir Test. Now they're different. And I can go ahead and keep them straight and not worry about sending the wrong email to the wrong test. So with the get call, we can update our table and go back the other direction, the CRM API post call. We can update that, our CRM now, with the new name of Sir Test and Mr. Test. So that way everyone is on the same page and has the correct name to the correct email. In this way, the data can flow back and forth between your CRM or pretty much any application you have, any database of leads, and the IDX Broker system. So make one change, and at some point it will show up in the other system. This can be automated in on a cron job every couple minutes, or however you decide to program it. This is going to work. One thing I do want to stress is be sure to budget your API calls. You only get 250 at the client level, get more at the partner level, but even then, budgeting your API calls will save you a lot of resources and a lot of time, as more methods for API are released, you may need to budget for those in the future as well. So that's about it for getting in or putting and posting information into the IDX Broker system. My next webinar is going to do a lot of the same thing as far as getting information, posting it into the IDX Broker system, but the next webinar will be aggregated methods. So we're going to be looking at this on a much larger scale. This is going to be very helpful for partners who might already be gathering data and editing data, lead data for their clients. The aggregated methods will allow you to do this across all clients at once. So I really encourage everybody who is a partner who is going to be programming for lots of clients to attend our aggregated methods webinar, which will be next month. This concludes today's webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, developers@idxbroker.com, and I will be emailing out the link for a replay of this webinar, the last webinar, and of course the next one on the aggregated method. These will all be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you very much for attending. I look forward to talking to you all.